From the national headquarters of RT America and our nation's capital. Hello again, everybody. Here we are. I'm Rick Sanchez. Tonight, 2 U.S. senators are blasting Russia for denying them visas. But is that what really happened? This is a fascinating story of real high tensions between our two countries. But we're going to begin tonight with something that could affect every single person within the sound of my voice. Yesterday, when the group of 7 nations got together in France, the mood was kind of grim. And much of that has to do with financial fears. For the first time, we actually heard world leaders articulate their concerns for an oncoming global recession. Within the last 24 hours, in fact, Morgan Stanley, one of the largest multinational investment banks in the world, announced that it is downgrading its growth outlook for the first quarter of 2020 from 2.8 to 2.6%. Doesn't sound like a lot, but it is. It is suggesting that we could be in a recession within 6 months. That's Morgan Stanley saying that. Now, some of the talk of global recession is conjecture. Some of it is political. So what I would like to do on this night is cut to the chase and try and list for you the signs that have many economists concerned, or in some cases convinced. There are 7 of them. Let me take you through them. 1, the Mac Daddy, the escalation of the U.S.-China tariff war that really began about 18 months ago. 2, just last week, for the first time in a decade, the U.S. manufacturing sector showed a significant decline. 3, the recession in Germany has already begun. The economy contracted by a small margin in the second quarter and will contract by an even larger margins in the third. 4, China has a debt crisis. State industries have borrowed heavily, and so have consumers. Banks are weighed down by loans that may never get repaid. 5, the uncertainty of Brexit has already damaged investment and GDP growth throughout Europe. 6, tertiary countries with large economies still are also already in recession or have recently suffered a contraction. Here's the list: Argentina, Iran, South Africa, Turkey, Venezuela. And finally, bond markets, as we've told you here exclusively on this newscast, are extremely jittery. Investors who lend money to the U.S. government via the bond market are actually selling their short-term loans in droves in expectation of an imminent recession, just as they did before the 2008 financial crash. These are the signs to be taken in full or in part. Ignore it, analyze it, accept it. We present it in keeping with the axiom that we believe that information is power. This is the News with Rick Sanchez, where we believe it's time to do news again. And here we go. As you've come to expect, our list of the questions that we think you'll be asking tomorrow after watching this newscast tonight. Is a recession inevitable? And what does Ron Paul say about this? Is Russia denying U.S. senators visas? And who started this whole debacle? And that's what it is, say experts. Epstein's victims say, keep investigating. Who goes down if they do? But we kick off our A block tonight with the disturbing economic markers coming out of Europe. Germany, the EU's strongest economy, is almost certainly in the grips of a recession. Not in the future, not next year, right now. RT's Peter Oliver has the story from Berlin.
It would seem the German economy is heading for recession after it contracted by 0.1% in the quarter from April to June. It looks almost certain that there's going to be a second second quarter of contraction in a row, and that officially means you're in a recession. Now, to back up the idea that Germany may be heading that way, we're going to look at the findings of a Munich-based economic think tank, one of the most respected around. They put together an index every year of confidence amongst German businesses, and this time around, well, it's at the lowest it's been for almost 9 years. That's really the manufacturing industry where we've seen that confidence drop off. It's those manufacturers and the products that they export which builds the German economy. It would seem they also have the ability to be able to break it as well. The reason that there is a downturn in confidence amongst these big German companies is, well, two main reasons. One of them is President Donald Trump and his trade wars with China and just about anybody else he can get into a trade war with, and also Brexit and uncertainty over what's going to happen when, if, how Britain ends up, the United Kingdom ends up leaving the European Union. One of the other reasons for this, though, has been the automobile industry. Germany's cars are world famous. They're one of the biggest exports that comes out of the country, but the car industry has been feeling the pinch of late because of two reasons. One of them is that they're still fighting against the stigma and the fallout after getting caught cheating on emissions tests. That is still rumbling on, and certainly it did affect consumer confidence, but it's also potentially still going to end up costing multi-billions with a B in lawsuits. And there's also a problem for the German car manufacturers, is they haven't really handled a move away from the traditional combustion engine towards electric engines very well. They haven't been the global leaders they perhaps would have wanted to be when it comes to that. But when it comes to, are we in recession yet? No. Technically not, and it's certainly what's being said from the economy ministry here in Berlin. Their spokesperson said Germany is not in a recession, but that's pretty much only because we're not through September yet. However, the professor behind the study into business happiness, he said he hasn't seen lower morale or morale at this level since 2009, right at the very peak of the financial crisis. I'll leave you with a quote from him. He said that not a single ray of light was to be seen in any of Germany's key industries. Sleep well, everybody. That is the way it looks at the moment. Not going well on the confidence front. We're not in a recession yet, but that's more of a matter of time than anything else.
Thank you, Peter. We think. Joining us once again on the news here with Rick Sanchez is Dr. Ron Paul, former congressman, presidential candidate, and renowned libertarian, here to try and break down for us the structural weaknesses in the American economy, something we should all be attuned to, and who is likely to suffer most if and when a recession hits. Real wages for the average Chinese worker are up five-fold over the last 20 years. And by real wages, for those who don't know, I know you know, Dr. Paul, is not just how much money you make, but how much you can buy with that money. In other words, if 5 years ago you could only buy 4 apples with your paycheck, but now you can buy 20 apples. Whereas in the United States, real wages have actually gone down. I state that because I'm thinking, who wins this argument, this tariff war that we're having with China? Given that their workers are probably, I don't know, I guess the term would be more satisfied than ours right now, does that make them more apt to be able to outlast us in this war that Mr. Trump is engaging in?
I think a lot of people believe that, and there's a lot of truth to that, because we're looking at a lot of chaos. And I think you touched on something which I consider one of the most serious political problems, and that is the average worker hasn't kept up. The inflation has gone to subsidizing big corporations, big banks, and the welfare state. But and everybody recognizes that prices will go up too. The cost of education goes up, and all these different things. but wages never keep up. They're always, if prices are going up 10%, wages might go up 1%. So there's a lot of resentment. But what I get very annoyed about is people see these discrepancies and see freedom doesn't work, free markets don't work, sound money doesn't work, and all this, and they don't know what they're talking about. It is interventionism that we have. It's not socialism, but it's interventionism, which if you get too much of this partnership between corporations and government, you will end up with a more fascist state, and that's bipartisan. That's what bothers me. If you look at the medical system, that is a combination of big corporations and government and people who think they're going to get a free medical care, and that is corporatism, and I think it's very, very dangerous because people don't fully understand it, and it's going to lead to something much worse.
I think the concern that I hear from you when you and I were talking, for example, this weekend, is that manipulation on the part of the government often breeds more manipulation on the part of the government. And I think what we see coming down the pike here is that these tariffs, which, as you said, in and of themselves are manipulative on the part of our government, will cause our economy to somehow shrink. It'll cause Wall Street to weird out and panic, which will then cause the Fed to try to fix things for them with another manipulation on top of a manipulation by then decreasing interest rates. So at what point does this kind of stuff stop? And I think that's your concern, right?
Yeah, and I think we're getting pretty close to it, and I've always believed the admonition that if goods and service and people don't cross borders, armies will. And the founders knew that, and that's why they wanted a more free trade and get along with people. But no, I think that there's a blame game going on, more hostility than ever, even though I've only been out of the Congress for 6 years or so. I mean, the language is getting tougher because it's bankrupt. We're bankrupt financially, we're bankrupt morally, and that's why we're heading on a collision course. So all of a sudden you see the popping up of the radical socialists coming and declaring what they know. And then also I think the voices that you don't get to hear much about are the ones you're willing to at least talk with. And that is, maybe there's another system built on property and freedom and getting along and diplomacy and all these things. And I'm pretty optimistic that that's the way to go. And what we're doing is this animosity is building up, and I think it's going to end. I sort of alluded to it in my program today that we could end up, within a year or so of some major calamity, because I don't think for a minute that we really recovered from the recession of 08 and 09. We just spent a lot of money, and I think there's trillions of dollars in bank reserves. The bank reserves, money left over that they don't know what to do with, is 10 times bigger than what would have been ordinary. And that one rule they changed is they get paid interest on it. So the money is pumped out and the banks end up holding the most. Then they get paid interest on safe loans. And I don't know about you, Rick, but I still, if I have to have a little cash run for emergencies, if I put it in a CD, I don't get very much interest off it. So it's a system that is very bad. It's doomed to fail. And zero rate interest rates or negative rates, it's total insanity. It's so far removed from an economic policy that makes sense.
That's absolutely crazy. Final thing, and we're down to 10 seconds, so I almost just need a yes or no from you. A lot of people trust your gut on this kind of stuff. Are you convinced at this point that we're heading, probably sometime next year, into a recession?
Oh yeah, I think it started. I think there's enough evidence there. I remember this came up in 07 during one of our debates, and I said, this already started. In 08, they said, oh, okay, we can go back and we can figure out. No, it has started. And besides, I look at this a little bit differently. I look at the people who are suffering, the low middle income people who are working and can't even afford their rent. They've been in recession. They've been in depression. So it's not so easy to say everybody gets, the same kind of treatment. The very wealthy can escape a lot of this punishment, and that just aggravates the political system and causes more anger.
He tells the truth. That's why we have him on. Ron Paul. Thank you, my friend.
我的民啊，你們要從那城出來，免得與他一同有罪，受他所受的災殃。 因他的罪惡滔天，他的不義神已經想起來。他怎樣榮耀自己，怎樣奢華，也當叫他照樣痛苦悲哀。所以在一天之內，他的災殃要一齊來到，就是死亡、悲哀、饑荒。他又被火燒盡了，因為審判他的主神大有能力。地上的君王素來與他行淫，一同奢華的，看見燒他的煙，就必為他哭泣哀號。因怕他的痛苦，就遠遠的站着說：哀哉，哀哉！巴比倫大城，堅固的城啊！一時之間，你的刑罰就來到了。地上的客商也都為他哭泣悲哀，因為沒有人再買他們的貨物了。巴比倫啊，你所貪愛的果子離開了你，你一切的珍饈美味和華美的物件也從你中間毀滅，決不能再見了。販賣這些貨物，藉着他發了財的客商，因怕他的痛苦，就遠遠的站着哭泣悲哀，說：哀哉，哀哉！這大城啊，素常穿着細麻、紫色、朱紅色的衣服，又用金子、寶石和珍珠為裝飾。一時之間，這麼大的富厚就歸於無有了。凡船主和坐船往各處去的，並眾水手，連所有靠海為業的，都遠遠的站着，看見燒他的煙，就喊着說：有何城能比這大城呢？他們又把塵土散在頭上，哭泣悲哀，喊着說：哀哉，哀哉！這大城啊！凡有船在海中的，都因他的珍寶成了富足，他在一時之間就成了荒場。
我哋正面對自從大蕭條以嚟最差嘅經濟表現。你要相信我，我哋目前面對巨大嘅泡沫，佢哋故意令大家見到股票向好，但係佢哋只要加少少息口，股市就會全線下挫。所以我哋有一個又大又肥嘅泡沫經濟。
這樣，你們看見這些事漸漸的成就，也該曉得神的國近了。